He was just passing through town, tired and alone, when two small children stepped in front of his truck. The girl clutched a trembling puppy in her arms, and with tears in her eyes, she whispered words that shattered his soul. "Please buy our puppy, our mom is dying." He thought it was just another sad story, but when he followed them into that broken house, the door creaked open, and the woman lying inside was the love he lost 15 years ago. He wasn't ready for the truth behind that door. And what happened next changed everything. It was nearing sunset when Daniel parked his pickup truck at the edge of the dusty street. He had driven through the small, forgotten town more times than he could count, but something felt different today. The air was heavy, and the quiet carried a weight that wrapped around him like a memory he couldn't shake. He had just finished a long day's work, tired, dirty, and thinking of nothing more than a warm shower and silence. But as he approached the old wooden porch of a rundown house, two children stepped out from the shadows. The girl couldn't have been older than 10. Her little brother clung to her tattered dress, his eyes wide and red from crying. The girl stepped forward with something wrapped in a towel. "Please buy our puppy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Our mom, she's dying." Daniel froze. The words hit him like a gut punch. He looked down and saw the tiny brown puppy, no more than a few weeks old, curled up and shaking in her hands. The boy sniffled, looking up at Daniel with eyes that seemed too hollow for someone so young. They weren't begging for money. They weren't asking for food. They were trying to sell the only thing they had left that could bring them any hope. He knelt down slowly, his voice soft. "Where's your mom?" The girl looked back toward the door, hesitant. "Inside. She hasn't gotten up in 2 days. We don't have medicine or food." Daniel's breath caught. This wasn't just desperation. It was the last flicker of children trying to keep their world from falling apart. He stood up, heart pounding. "I'll help," he said. But the girl shook her head. "No charity. Just buy the puppy. That's all." It wasn't the words that broke him. It was how bravely she said them, as if she'd already accepted a world that was unfair and unforgiving. He looked at the tiny creature in her arms, then at the shaking boy. Something inside him cracked wide open. He reached for his wallet, pulling out a few bills, but the girl didn't take them. "You have to see Mom first," she said, and before he could speak, she turned and pushed the door open. The hinges creaked like they were protesting the truth behind them. Daniel followed them into the house. The smell of sickness hit him immediately, sour, stale air clinging to peeling walls and broken furniture. The living room was dark, the curtains pulled tight against the world. A single mattress lay on the floor, and on it, a woman barely moved beneath a thin blanket. Her chest rose shallowly, her skin pale, lips cracked. But it wasn't her condition that stopped Daniel in his tracks. It was her face. He stumbled backward, gripping the wall. "No, it can't be," he muttered. The little girl looked up at him, confused. "You know her." Daniel's eyes were wide, haunted. "Her name is Claire," he whispered. "I knew her a long time ago." The world spun. Claire, the girl he had loved in college, the one who disappeared without a trace 15 years ago. The woman he thought he'd lost forever. And here she was, fragile and fading in front of him, with two children clinging to the last shreds of hope by offering a puppy to a stranger. He knelt beside the mattress, gently touching her hand. It was cold, too cold. "Claire, it's me. It's Daniel." Her eyelids fluttered, her breath catching for a moment. She turned her head slightly, and for a brief second, her eyes met his. There was recognition, pain, and something deeper, shame. "I didn't know who else to call," she croaked, barely audible. Daniel leaned in closer. "You didn't call. Your kids did." A single tear escaped her eye. "I didn't want you to see me like this," she whispered, "but I prayed someone would come." He turned to the children, who stood silently, their small shoulders tense with fear. "You two are very brave," he said gently. "What are your names?" The girl stepped forward, still holding the puppy. "I'm Lily. This is Max." Daniel nodded. "I'm going to help your mom, okay? You did the right thing." He looked back at Claire. Her breathing was labored, her body frail. He didn't know what had happened in the missing years, why she disappeared, or why she never reached out. But none of it mattered now. She needed help. And those kids, they needed a miracle. He stood and pulled out his phone, calling for an ambulance. His hands were shaking. As he gave the address, he glanced at Lily, who was now gently petting the puppy, tears silently falling down her cheeks. Max had buried his face in her side. Daniel's heart ached in places he thought had gone numb long ago. After hanging up, he went to the kitchen. The cabinets were nearly bare, just a can of beans, a box of salt, and a cracked mug with dry tea leaves at the bottom. He filled a glass with water from the sink, brought it back, and tried to help Claire drink. She coughed, weakly sipping. Her hand trembled as it touched his wrist. "I thought you moved on," she whispered. Daniel looked into her eyes. "I never stopped looking." The sound of sirens echoed faintly in the distance. The kids rushed to the window, faces pressed to the glass. For a moment, there was silence, a fragile, suspended breath of hope. Claire smiled faintly. "You came," she said. Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. "You called." But deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. What had happened in those lost years? Why had she vanished? And how had she ended up here, alone with two children trying to sell a puppy to save their dying mother? As the ambulance lights flashed outside, Daniel realized something else. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a reckoning. And the truth waiting behind that door was far more than he ever imagined. The ambulance doors burst open, and two paramedics rushed into the house, their boots thudding heavily against the worn-out wooden floor. Lily and Max moved aside quickly, clutching each other as Daniel stepped back to give space. Claire's breathing had grown weaker by the minute, and her grip on his hand had nearly faded. One paramedic knelt beside her while the other prepped a stretcher, their faces focused but grave. They didn't ask many questions. The situation spoke for itself. As they gently lifted Claire onto the stretcher, she winced, trying to stay conscious. Her eyes met Daniel's again. There was a flicker of something deeper than pain, unfinished words, heavy truths, buried years trying to surface. "Stay with the kids," she whispered. "Don't let them be alone." Then she slipped back into unconsciousness. "I will," Daniel said, more to himself than anyone else. The paramedics wheeled her out the door, and in moments, the ambulance sped off into the fading light. The silence that returned to the house was almost unbearable. The ticking of an old clock, the soft whimper of the puppy, and the shallow breathing of two children who had already seen too much. Daniel sat down slowly on the couch, his hands clasped together, trying to process the chaos. How had Claire ended up like this? He remembered her as fierce, brilliant, full of fire. She was the kind of girl who made you feel like the world was worth fighting for. And then one day gone. No calls, no letters. Years passed. He searched, but with nothing to follow. She vanished like a ghost. Lily stood in front of him now, arms wrapped around Max. "Will she be okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel looked at her, this tiny version of Claire with the same determined eyes, and felt a lump in his throat. "I hope so, sweetheart. The doctors will do everything they can." She nodded, holding back tears. Max didn't speak, just buried his face in her side again. Daniel leaned forward. "Do you have any family nearby? Grandparents? Uncles?" Lily shook her head. "No one. It's just us. Always been just us." Daniel exhaled deeply. He couldn't walk away now. Not after seeing what he'd seen. Not after realizing that these weren't just strangers. They were Claire's children. Possibly his children? The thought rattled him, but he didn't dare ask. Not yet. He spent the night with them. He cooked what little there was, gave them water, and let them sleep in Claire's bed while he lay down on the old couch. The puppy slept on his chest, warm and trembling. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the windows like whispers from the past. The next morning, Daniel drove the kids to the hospital. He didn't know what kind of reception he'd get, but when he walked through the emergency entrance with Lily and Max, a nurse recognized the names and quickly directed them to ICU. Claire was alive, but barely. Machines beeped steadily beside her, tubes in her arms, oxygen mask over her face. She looked smaller somehow, like life itself was slipping through her fingers. The doctor approached quietly. Are you family? He asked. Daniel hesitated. It was a long time ago. I'm a friend now. Her kids have no one. The doctor nodded, then pulled him aside. Her condition's critical. Severe pneumonia, malnutrition, untreated infection. She hasn't seen a doctor in years. We've stabilized her, but it's a long road ahead. Daniel looked at the room. Lily was sitting by her mother's side, holding her hand, her tiny lips mouthing something silently, maybe a prayer. Max stood at the window, staring at the cloudy sky. Do you know if she had insurance? Daniel asked. The doctor shook his head. No records. She came in under emergency status. Social services will step in soon if no guardian steps forward. That sentence hit Daniel hard. These kids, Claire's kids, could end up in the system, torn apart, sent to strangers, lost in the shuffle. He couldn't let that happen. But the questions gnawed at him. Why had she disappeared? Why had she never told him? And were these children his? Later that afternoon, while the kids napped in the hospital lounge, Daniel sat by Claire's side. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but aware. He gently squeezed her hand. You're safe now, he said. She gave a small nod. The kids? They're okay. Stronger than they should be. You raised fighters. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Daniel hesitated, then asked what had haunted him all night. Claire, why did you leave? Why didn't you call? I never stopped looking for you. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if the memories weighed more than her frail body could carry. I was pregnant with Lily, she whispered. I wanted to tell you, but when I finally built up the courage, I found out you were engaged. Daniel's heart stopped. What? No, that wasn't true. I never. Claire shook her head slowly. I saw a photo. You with her. I thought maybe you moved on, and I didn't want to be the mistake that came back, so I disappeared. Daniel stood up, pacing, the air knocked out of him. That was my cousin. We were at her wedding. Claire, I never loved anyone after you. She blinked, the pain of all the lost years washing over her. I didn't know. I was scared, alone. And then, Max came along. Different father. He didn't stay. I worked 2 jobs, kept us afloat until I got sick. She looked away. I taught Lily not to ask for help. I was too proud, maybe too ashamed. Daniel sat back down, his voice softer now. You were never alone. You just didn't know I was still here, still waiting. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she said, for everything. Daniel leaned closer. I don't care about the past. I care about you. And them. She looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, They deserve better than this. Daniel nodded. Then let me give them that. Let me give you that. The room fell into silence again, but this time it was different. There was still pain, but also hope, a fragile thread tying them all together again. And Daniel knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something unexpected, something powerful, something that started with a knock on a broken porch and a whisper from 2 desperate children who just wanted to save their mother. The hospital room dimmed as evening settled in, casting long shadows across the sterile floor. Claire had fallen asleep, her hand still loosely resting in Daniel's. Machines beeped steadily beside her, each sound a reminder that life was still holding on barely. Daniel sat silently, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of years lost and the ache of emotions long buried. Outside the glass wall, Lily and Max slept curled together on the waiting room chairs, the puppy tucked between them like a fragile secret. He leaned back and closed his eyes. The last 24 hours had cracked his world open, from 2 kids on a porch asking him to buy a puppy to this, sitting beside the woman he once loved, now hanging between life and death. And those children, her children, had awakened something in him, a fire he thought had gone out, a purpose he hadn't felt in years. A quiet knock broke his thoughts. A hospital social worker stepped in, clipboard in hand, voice low. Mr. Rains, may I speak with you for a moment? He followed her outside. In the hallway, she glanced at the sleeping children, then back at him. We understand you're not legally related to the mother or the children. Is that correct? Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Correct, but I knew Claire. We were together long ago. She looked at him carefully. The state will need to intervene if no guardian steps up. The children can't stay here long. Her words sliced through the fragile calm like ice. Daniel's voice sharpened. So what happens to them? They'd be placed in temporary care, she said. Foster system, possibly separate placements. Separate? The word echoed in his skull like a scream. No, not after everything. He looked through the window at the two sleeping souls who had clung to each other through fear, hunger, and sickness. They had already lost too much. He couldn't let them lose each other too. I want custody, Daniel said without thinking. The social worker raised an eyebrow. You understand that's not simple. I don't care how hard it is. I'll do what it takes. She gave him a long look. We'll need proof of stability, background checks, and if there's any biological connection to the children, especially Lily. Daniel's throat tightened. That question had hovered in his mind since he met the kids. Could Lily be his daughter? Could that one night, so long ago, have resulted in something he never knew? I'll find out, he said. Just don't take them away. The social worker nodded, noting something on her clipboard. I'll hold the file for 72 hours. That's the most I can do. And with that, she left. Later that night, when Claire stirred again, Daniel gently woke her. Her voice was weaker now, each word an effort. Did they try to take them? She asked. Daniel shook his head. Not yet, but they will. Unless you tell me the truth. She closed her eyes, a tear rolling down her cheek. Lily is yours, she whispered. I didn't mean to keep her from you. I thought I was protecting her from a broken future, but I only gave her a harder one. Daniel's chest ached. The child who had stood on the porch, offering him a puppy in exchange for saving her mother, was his own flesh and blood. His daughter. Why didn't you ever tell me? He asked, voice cracking. Claire shook her head slowly. Because I didn't think I was enough for you, and I didn't think I could raise her with the weight of our past. He reached over and took her hand. You should have let me decide that. I lost 15 years with her, and I don't want to lose one more second. Claire stared at him, eyes shimmering. Promise me, she said, that if I don't make it, you'll take care of them. Both of them. Daniel leaned closer. I promise. With everything I have. The next morning, the blood test results confirmed it. Lily was Daniel's daughter. It changed everything legally. He now had a right to her. But Max had no blood tie, no legal protection. Daniel didn't care. He's my son too, he told the court officer. Maybe not by blood, but by heart. And I'm not leaving him behind. By the third day, Claire took a turn for the worse. Her lungs struggled. Her body thinned like paper. Lily clung to her side, begging her to stay. Max held her other hand, sobbing silently. Daniel stood behind them, helpless. Claire opened her eyes one last time. You found me, she whispered. When I had nothing left, you still came. Daniel smiled through tears. Because I never stopped loving you. Her last breath was soft, peaceful, like the closing of a chapter that had waited far too long to end. After the funeral, Daniel took Lily and Max home. Not to a temporary place, not to a stranger's care, but home. His home. Weeks passed. Lily began school, her laughter slowly returning. Max, once silent and guarded, now ran through the yard chasing the puppy he once tried to sell. And Daniel, he found a purpose he didn't know he needed. One afternoon, as they sat under the tree in the backyard, Lily looked up at him. Did you love Mom a lot? She asked. Daniel nodded, voice soft. More than anything. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I think she sent you to us. When we had no one, we opened the door, and there you were. Daniel smiled through tears, pulling them both into a hug. No, sweetheart, you saved me. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive with flowers or promises. It comes as two children on a porch, holding a puppy, whispering through tears. Please buy our puppy, our mom is dying. And behind that door wasn't just a fading woman or a broken past. It was a second chance, a lost love, and a family being born again in the ashes of heartbreak. Months passed, but Daniel never forgot that night. The night two children knocked on his heart with nothing but a puppy and a whisper of pain. The house that once echoed with silence now filled with laughter. Lily painted sunflowers on the walls. Max lined up toy trucks along the hallway, calling it his super road. And Daniel stood in the kitchen each morning, making breakfast for a family he didn't know he needed. Every room carried a trace of Claire. Her spirit lingered in the books on the shelf, the lullabies Lily sang to Max, and in the quiet moments when Daniel stared out the window, remembering her final words. She had trusted him with her children, with her world, and that trust became the anchor that kept him steady through grief. One evening, Lily sat on the porch, holding the grown-up puppy in her lap. "Do you think Mom can see us?" she asked softly. Daniel knelt beside her. "I think she never stopped watching." Lily smiled gently. "I hope she's proud of us." He looked at her, this brave little girl with her mother's fire, and whispered, "She would be more than proud. She'd be in awe." Max ran outside, holding a drawing he made. "It's our family," he said. The picture showed 4 figures: Daniel, Lily, Max, and the puppy, all holding hands beneath a bright sun. Daniel took the paper and felt something shift in his chest, a final, quiet healing. "It's perfect," he said, voice thick with emotion. That night, as the children slept, Daniel opened a box Claire had left behind. Inside were letters, some written to him, some to the children. The one on top was addressed to him, in Claire's handwriting. "Daniel, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. But if you're still there, thank you. You came back when I had nothing left, and you gave Lily and Max a future I couldn't. You gave me peace in my final days. Please remind them often that they were loved deeply by both of us. And tell Lily, I see so much of you in her. That's why I never forgot you. Claire." Tears streamed down his face as he folded the letter. He looked around the room, the dim lamp, the soft breathing of the children down the hall, the puppy curled up at the foot of the couch. This was home, not the one he had imagined, but the one life had chosen for him. One built not from perfection, but from pain, redemption, and the courage of 2 kids who refused to give up. And to think, it all started with a knock on the door and 7 words that would forever echo in his soul. "Please buy our puppy, our mom is dying."